Welcome to ESVN, the Emma Sports Vigeland Network show. My name is Emma Vigeland, and you know what to do, folks. Subscribe. YouTube.com/ESVN show. Put on push notifications. Rate us 5 stars. Apple, Spotify. If you're watching live, like the stream. If you're not watching live, comment below. Say hello to us, and say hello to one Bradley Alsop.
Matt always puts this microphone so low. Hi, everyone. Craning over here.
Yeah, how you doing there, Bradley? Look at that. Camera angle on fleek?
On fleek, the fuck, yeah.
Bringing that back. How about that?
Yeah, we're bringing it back. That's probably like must be 9 or 10-year-old me at this point.
Might be a little bit older than the last time that we had a Chiefs-Eagles Super Bowl, by the way.
It feels like deja vu to me that we're discussing another Chiefs-Eagles Super Bowl.
I mean, it really is amazing that, like, the Chiefs, gosh, so now they'll have, they faced, obviously, the Buccaneers the one time that they lost, but now this will be their 5th Super Bowl that they've been in the big game for, and then 4 out of 5 of those are the 49ers or the Philadelphia Eagles. I mean, the Chiefs, we should just dive right into it here, just to wax poetically about how incredible they are, and then we will wax poetically about how incredible the Eagles are, because, like, it's almost, the Eagles have that incredible physical talent, and in terms of, like, a roster in the NFL, there is not a roster I would take over the Philadelphia Eagles. I've decided that at this point. I mean, maybe the Lions when they were at full strength with Aiden Hutchinson and they didn't have every basically player on their defense on IR, but I don't feel that way now. Because the way that this defense for the Eagles has emerged, I guess now I'm talking about the Eagles, but I mean, that secondary, the fact that they were able to get those rookies and Cooper DeJean and Quinyon Mitchell to play such incredible. Well, first of all, that they were able to draft them in the same round one, then round two,
within like 6 picks of each other. So.
I mean, was it in the same? Was DeJean in round 1?
No. It was like Mitchell was like late first round, and I think basically DeJean was in like the top 5 or 6 second round picks.
But I do think that for some reason Mitchell was like they were picking in the mid rounds. This was the season when this is the season after they lost to the Bucs in the first round of the playoffs. So it was still kind of, Mitchell should not have fallen that far, and they were higher up in the draft than you would think that they would because they kind of collapsed at the end of the year. But Darius Slay still played in this game, but they were able to interchange some of these secondary players, and Mitchell and DeJean both had huge plays in the game. Jalen Carter was all over the place. And you just go like, oh my God, this team is extremely dominant, and they have no signs of slowing down because they have 3 players on rookie contracts on the defensive side of the football that are absolutely dominant right now.
And I think for both teams that are now in the Super Bowl, it really is a huge testament. I mean, obviously to some of the Chiefs probably a little bit more so just in terms of being a testament to Mahomes in some ways, but certainly in terms of I would say both teams in terms of maximizing their personnel are probably the 2 best teams at it this season, and in a lot of other seasons, honestly, especially knowing that we had this matchup 2 Super Bowls ago. Like, part of the reason of that is not just obviously. It's not just Mahomes, obviously, on one side of things. It's also, of course, their really excellent coaching, but just being able to really maximize the talent that they do have on roster. Combined with, on the Eagles side of things, just hitting really, really successfully in draft in and draft out and off-season in, off-season out. It'll be I think it's just going to be, as much as it's kind of, it's a little bit one could be a little bit beleaguered by yet another matchup that we have seen already, but
I think the numbers are down. I think people are fatigued by the Chiefs, which I get it, but this is
going to be, at least in my opinion, just an extremely, extremely
exciting
competitive football game.
Yeah, and
this is two of the best teams of the last 5, 6, 7 years at the height of their abilities right now.
Right. And honestly, Jalen Hurts played really well in this game. It looked like that
This was like one of
issue.
his best games, even regular season included, in my view, I think.
And Marshawn Lattimore was trying to get in A.J. Brown's head. There was a physical altercation on the field, which why was it not offsetting? There were
that I was interested about too, because I feel like
A.J. Brown
was a little
pulled Lattimore's helmet off, and they just gave the penalty to Lattimore.
It seemed a little bit mutual. I agree, but it's tough because it's tough because Lattimore, unfortunately, it's good energy. I think especially in a playoff context and especially for a young team, it's like good to kind of bring that competitive energy. But relative to some of these other receivers, he's definitely lost a step. You know what I mean? Like I think he's just a little bit older. He's not in this prime of his career anymore. So AJ Brown had a few times where he really was kind of getting the better.
Well, it was A.J. Brown's best game in quite a while. He had 96 receiving yards, and he had a touchdown.
And a few like just incredible, kind of like A.J. Brown style catches.
Right,
like
where, I mean...
bringing the ball down in kind of an incredible fashion.
Hurts is not somebody who drives the football, but when he can get a one-on-one matchup and he can do an arcing kind of shot, not a shot, but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
An arcing pass along the sidelines, not really in the middle of the field. He can time that up really well with his receivers. And A.J. Brown, there was a beautiful pass that he had to him along, I think it was the left sideline.
And that's what I think that's where sort of Brown has a little bit of like, that's where I kind of see a little bit of similarity between a Brown and a receiver like Jamar Chase is like for a quarterback, it's just sort of like when the passing game is rolling, or at least kind of being a little bit more effective than it has been the last few games. It's nice for Hurts to also know that in some of these one-on-one plays, he can just be like, I'm going to throw it up to my guy and sort of like...
He reminds me of Mike Evans in that way.
Right,
another player
definitely
that
high catch point. Like
Lattimore had trouble with this postseason.
But in terms of that, also in the sense of being like, if that one-on-one matchup's there, I could presumably just throw it up and kind of have an understanding that there's a high likelihood that catch is going to be made. It's a nice thing to have, especially when your run game is operating at such a high level that you can even go to that.
Yeah, he is a very strong receiver, and he can win those matchups.
The strength is really amazing too, for sure.
And Goddard, he's kind of being eased back into the game plan. Like Jalen Hurts, part of why he played so well is he spread the ball around. Goddard had 7 receptions for 85 yards. Few really clutch catches for Devonta Smith, and he also drew a really key defensive pass interference penalty. And then, of course, Saquon Barkley was less of a factor as the game went on, partially because everything else opened up because they were terrified of this absolute freak show.
And it's also like Saquon almost like doing his job in the sense of like if they're doing everything they can to stop the run, it's going to leave open passing lanes otherwise.
And I was rooting for the Commanders just because whatever, but like and because of my I just hate them less than the Eagles and the Cowboys. It's just because they hadn't made a championship game, an NFC championship game in my lifetime. That's just kind of how it goes. But if I was being truly honest with myself, the game was over on that first offensive touch by the Eagles when Saquon just went to the house and he didn't just go to the house untouched. He was touched multiple times and was like, fuck you, I'm getting into the end zone. And I mean, if I were an Eagles fan, the level of electricity that would be running through my body on that run, I mean, he's a great player.
And that's truly, that play is somewhat, in my view, like a real enactment and of the peak of the Eagles' vision, which is that our offensive line, which we prioritize very, very strongly with one of the best offensive line coaches in the league in Jeff Stoutland.
They may have one of the best offensive lines in the history of the NFL,
100%.
And they had injuries, and it didn't matter.
In this game, right?
Steen was starting at left guard. Landon Dickerson had to go out halfway through the game.
Both had to come out at multiple points, exactly.
And Dickerson had to be moved over to play center, which he hadn't been playing since college.
And with that, you see, especially in that first offensive snap, a massive gap opening up for Saquon, and then prioritizing, kind of seeing where the sort of counter trend of how running the ball has sort of returned a little bit to the NFL because of all of the living in more of a too high world in this league where defenses are trying their hardest to avoid the explosive pass play.
Right.
So you invest in Saquon. He gives you this near MVP level season. And in the biggest game so far yet, he just on his own, after getting right through that huge avenue of space, just torches every defender in his path, like a little spin to the left and then darting all the way across the formation into the center of the field, and then having no one else there to stop him. It's just like, if you ever, I think, wanted to see something that would kind of be like, oh, this might be like the apex of what this Eagles team may look like, it was kind of that type of play.
Yep, and I was surprised that Jalen Hurts' knee held up to the point where he had a rushing touchdown as well. He was able to move and run, and every time he does that, it unlocks another level for Saquon Barkley, because you always have to have a spy on the quarterback, and you never know what they're going to do because of Hurts' running ability, and then he can be really opportunistic in the pass game as well. Yeah, I mean, so we mentioned the secondary. Their defensive line is just out of control, and Jalen Carter is arguably already the best defensive tackle in the entire NFL in his second year. And the Commanders, I was like, thought it could be close. I thought the Eagles would still pull it off, but that it would be a much closer game than it was, because in the end, Jaden Daniels, what is that team? And I know Terry McLaurin has had a really good year, but he had a touchdown on a broken play, or he was able to break a tackle. But overall, Terry McLaurin didn't have a dominant game this game. Zach Ertz had over 100 yards, but you can see, like, when an older tight end gets that kind of stat line, that's like, oh, rookie quarterback has a safety blanket.
And Ertz definitely, I think, has been operating at a little bit of like, sort of, if Daniels gets a little scrambled, or like if he kind of needs to go to one of his reads, he goes to Ertz.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a good stat line, but when I see something like that, I'm like, okay. I mean, I don't necessarily.
You don't necessarily want like the NFC Championship game script offensively, like running through Zach Ertz.
Right.
Like, and not to take away from it, like he honestly has played really well, but I see what you're saying. You maybe want to feed.
But they need another receiver. I mean, they are prime them, and we've been saying it. T. Higgins. I think you should look at Washington. I'm sure that's the kind of team now that they went to the NFC Championship. People are going to want to be a part of that culture. Green Bay Packers need an X receiver. I don't think the Christian Watson experiment is going to work out for them as him being a true number one. So the Commanders have pieces, but they were really hurt by Daron Payne not being able to play in this game. You know, as I mentioned, the injuries on the Eagles offensive line, it may not have even mattered because they're so talented and well coached, but if they wanted to exploit that, they are pretty thin now at this point on their defensive line, and Daron Payne needed to be there to be a disruptor, and we probably should have known about the outcome of this game based on that. But Frankie Louvu was a really strong player for them. Like, he had that sack on Jalen Hurts, which caused Jake Elliott to miss that field goal. But yeah, the loss of Sam Cosmi was incredibly consequential for the Commanders. They started Nick Allegretti at left guard, and he was pretty bad all game. Like, they don't have the depth that the Eagles do on their offensive line to withstand that. And then you had the De'Ami Brown fumble and the Austin Eckler fumble, which you just can't have. I've been happy to see De'Ami Brown kind of come alive with better quarterback play, because he's fast and he looked good coming out of UNC. I think I've said this on previous episodes because I'm just trying to prove my draft narratives correct about players I liked back in the day. But it is, it's encouraging to see. However, that was just a pretty bad fumble where he did not need to be making that many jumps and cuts, and he could have gone down and played it smart. And Eckler, there's no excuse though with his level of veteran, but Eckler's always had fumbling issues.
I think to your point with I think especially going up against an opponent like this for the Commanders, like, that any level of attrition or kind of any false step would really be hard to come back from. And I think, as you were saying, Allegretti having to come in relief, no pain to kind of have the front be at its best against, I think, certainly the best offensive line that they would play. I mean, outside of the Lions, obviously, maybe, but still a really just like as we've been talking about, just maybe outside of the Lions, the most impactful unit on the offensive line in this playoffs. I'd potentially argue at full strength. So. And even not just because of how well coached they are, I think you just need every weapon at your disposal. And as you were saying as well, hard to make really any mistakes against this team and kind of come out on top, especially when high octane offense that we saw against Detroit was just not as capable, because, as you were saying, a number of guys were able to get home and kind of cause some real chaos. Like, you had Nolan Smith bending around the left side for a sack. You had guys like Oren Burks and Isaiah Rodgers coming from depth to either punch the ball out or kind of stop their screen game short. Like, they were being stifled from a number of different areas of the field, and just they couldn't get comfortable in what usually were the items in their arsenal that made their offense hum as it usually did.
Right. So the Eagles are like an absolute behemoth. They're incredibly talented. They will see how it goes. I'm reminded, it's odd when you see their secondary players emerging a little bit. Maybe wasn't this game, it was the previous game where Brian Dawkins came and got the fans in Philadelphia all excited. But I am reminded of the fact that the Eagles, really, since Lurie has purchased the team, have just been so great at accumulating talent, and they probably should have more than one Lombardi. But in that Dawkins team in the 2004 season, they ran into the New England Patriots and their dynasty, and then last time the Eagles were in the Super Bowl, they ran into the Chiefs in their dynasty, and now they're about to do it again. The outcome could be different. They have Saquon, which is another added piece, but these AFC dynasties, man, they're just like the Patriots. Just, Peyton Manning limited him until he finally broke through, but now we're seeing this with Josh Allen, although it's worse somehow, because I think that the Colts finally broke through. Here, I have the stat actually written down because it was so notable. Josh Allen has now, his 13 career NFL playoff starts are the most ever for any starting quarterback or any quarterback who hasn't made it to the Super Bowl. Peyton Manning started 12. Now he's eclipsed. Mahomes has hurt Josh Allen more than Brady has hurt Peyton Manning already.
And he's not even 30 years old.
Yeah, and there's still more to come. Peyton Manning started 12 games before he won the Super Bowl. His 13th playoff start was when they beat the Bears in the Super Bowl. Joe Flacco had previously started 12 games before he won the Super Bowl against the 49ers. That was his 13th playoff start. Donovan McNabb, that was the other reason I was thinking of that 2004 Philadelphia Eagles team. He started 11 games before he was in the Super Bowl and started there and lost in that, obviously, game to the Patriots. So Allen is in a league of his own, and unlike those guys who got to the Super Bowl with having won an a AFC/NFC championship game, he's never even been there because of Patrick Mahomes.
Well, they got
Nope.
there. I think it was 2020.
Nope. No. I don't think so. They've never been. He's never been.
Well, I thought there were.
Nope. Yeah. That wasn't. I mean, I don't remember who the Bengals beat in the 2021 season to get there, but it wasn't the Bills.
I'm seeing this 38-24 AFC Championship from 2021.
Oh, really?
I forgot. Also, I didn't.
That was the AFC Championship game.
It was right. I think, and then ultimately the Bucks beat the Chiefs.
That was the Bills?
Yeah, I'm seeing AFC Championship 38-24. What the date? This was January 24th, 2021.
Gosh, okay.
I mean, I barely remembered it too. I was saying the same thing, and I was looking it up.
Well, okay.
But it doesn't really change the,
Yeah.
It doesn't really change what you're saying, which is that the person who holds the keys is Patrick Mahomes, and it's just an unfortunate. I think he literally said this to Josh Allen. He was like, "Sorry, it had to be us two."
Right.
Basically being like, I know I'm the man, and if you were in literally any other time period, you probably would have gotten at least to one Super Bowl, let alone won a Super Bowl. But
Right.
I'm here.
Right.
So sorry about that, man.
Right, exactly. Yeah, so I mean, all right. This is actually starting to bother me because I'm really you looked it up, but I need to see it for myself. The list of their seasons because when they got there. Like that was the score against the Chiefs?
The Chiefs won 38-24 against the Bills.
What is wrong with me? Why can't I remember that? In the Sean McDermott era. Okay. In the 2020 season. You know why? It was because that was in the middle of the freaking pandemic.
Yeah, that's the thing. I
memory hold that.
No, I was talking to my wife like adamantly saying that this was Josh Allen's first AFC Championship game. And she was like, I thought I remember one other one. I was like, I don't think so. And then I was like, oh. Like
it was that horrible
I barely
season.
remember. I barely remember that entire season because the most of it was happening in the fall of 2020.
Yeah, and it was just like there was nothing else on TV.
But everything was so bleak.
Yeah, I mean, they maybe let some fans back.
Right,
into the
which
stands
even in its own right was like, this doesn't seem right or feel good. And
right.
And also, this was the one thing I was also going to say too is like, to your point about these dynasties is like, it's interesting that we could make the analog between Manning and Brady.
Oh, right before the pandemic. God damn it. All right, go on.
But it was we could make the analog between Brady and Manning in the sense of like of Mahomes and Allen.
Yeah.
But it's interesting too is that but Brady, just in terms of a testament to his longevity also, he was still in both on the Patriots and then on the Bucs prior to retiring, still a little bit of an impediment to Mahomes because the Patriots won the AFC Championship game when D Ford went off sides in overtime.
Yes.
And then beat the Bucs in the the Chiefs in the Super Bowl in Tampa.
And no, that it was, yes, okay, I'm sorry. In the 2020 season, this was how it happened. The Chiefs lost in that Patriots AFC. Yeah. Right. But in the 2020 season, the Chiefs won in the AFC Championship and then lost to the Bucs in the pandemic season.
In the pandemic
there we go.
Exactly.
This is horrible podcasting, but I finally got
it's okay. It's like this was. It was easy to memory hole and hard to like piece together even for me as well. So
there we go. That. Right in the middle of everything, we finally have that fact pattern down. Now that we got that down, basically it's just very sad for the Bills. I do feel for them. I feel for Josh Allen. But I want to say that I really didn't agree with a lot of coaching decisions that Sean McDermott made in this game. And I felt like I said the same thing last year. Like, why are they still doing this tush push thing when it wasn't working all game? And like, I think there's a case you can make that Josh Allen crossed the plane on that fourth down, but it's not that clear. And it should be more creative and clearer than that.
And I just think it's hard when it had not been working a few times, and it just seemed clear that they were not getting enough enough leverage on it for it to be successful. To me, it's almost like if you were going to do that, I think it would make sense to almost be doing it like out of the shotgun with an extra offensive lineman to get so there's generating more push and Allen has more momentum, as opposed to him taking it under center and just either trying to jump over or go under the pile when the push was not generating enough.
And they also, Romo and Nance clocked it, that basically the Chiefs and Spagnuolo had seen that he wanted to go off the left guard every time.
Right.
And did they adjust? Did they adjust? Because it doesn't seem like they did. It seems like they just kept going that, even though it was obvious that the Chiefs defense had their number on what they were trying to do early on.
And crucially, on that last 4th and 5, when the contested catch when Allen made the contested throw to Kincaid, is that Chris Jones was sort of lined up on the left side, I believe, and then all of the other, or he was lined up potentially on the right side, and all of. I don't exactly remember how the formation was. It was like three of the front four were bunched up, and Chris Jones was on one side. So obviously, they slid some of their protection over to account for Chris Jones. But because it's Spagnuolo, it was a pretty exotic blitz in the sense that 2 of the front dropped into coverage, 2 of the front came, and then a corner and the safety came from the other side.
Right.
So they kind of knew Allen was going to roll out one way, and because they were already had so much pressure on him, he didn't necessarily have time to turn around and see Khalil Shakir going in a little bit of an orbit reverse motion, basically where he goes across and then ducks right back around.
Yeah.
If Allen had time maybe to flip his hips and throw to that, Shakir would have been much open at least to run to the sideline. But they had caught the direction he was going in so quickly that Allen was like, I'm either going to get tackled or I need to just get off a act of God throw, and he which he had to. He was almost about to fall over.
Yeah.
And then it was enough, I think, to be enough for Kincaid to have a chance, but that was a hard throw for Kincaid to catch.
Oh, of course. But
And so-
Kincaid didn't have a great game because there was another drop that he had
Yes,
earlier.
right,
but
right.
the point is just I just never felt like the Bills were in control of the game, even when they eventually went up going into the fourth quarter. Like, the Chiefs just are never out of control of the game. Even when they make a
Yeah,
mistake. They had a
100%.
fumble for the first time since the beginning of November. It was the first
That
time
was
in
crazy
501 plays. And they still were able to be like, okay, now we're going to be, for the first time this year, score more than 30 points.
Right.
Because whatever we need to do to win the game, we're going to do it. And this was the first time all year that the Kansas City Chiefs didn't score 30 points. You know why? Because they basically have decided in this Mahomes era to stop chasing stats. They just care
Right.
about the playoffs and just care about playing complementary football, where Kareem Hunt got more touches than James Cook down the stretch. Like, by the way, Pacheco is not right. Maybe we'll see these 2 weeks off will help him. But
It seems like Hunt and even Pirine, who got Samaje Pirine, who got the last, the short area pass on 3rd and 9 to basically clinch the
Ice
game.
it, yeah.
It just seems like I even just feel like Pirine being in that space was probably because Pacheco is just, as you're saying, not fully healthy.
yeah, he doesn't have the same burst after
Right, and
his
he's just same burst of
ankle,
violence to his run either.
break, basically, which makes total sense. But Kareem Hunt, it looks like he is just very big, and he's also older, and it's crazy because he got traded.
Right, he was kind of
or
put on
released. I forget, it was released because of domestic violence,
Right.
and it went to the Browns, and
Yep,
then that
went to the
didn't work
Browns.
out. But he's not gotten a ring, so he's
Right.
trying.
He was kind of, and what's interesting is and credit, I think this is credit to coaching, obviously, is he
Yes.
was kind of placed on the scrap heap a little bit. It sort of was like, I kind of thought his career for the most part was over
But-
after Cleveland. And then he's really had a bit of a resurgence.
Andy
in
Reid
Kansas
trusts
City.
him. Andy Reid
Right.
trusts him. Pacheco's not right. It wasn't working with Carson
Steele, yeah.
Steele and all that. So the Chiefs are just incredible. I don't even know what to say. Mahomes is Elway with Brady's clutchness and brain. He's the greatest quarterback I've ever seen, and that's really.
And I do want to just highlight as well with the talking about Spagnuolo is that it was obviously, I think, going to be really important for the front four to get pressure, just so Spagnuolo, honestly, I think, could stash some of his blitzes, so he wasn't just doing that every time, and they were sort of anticipating it.
Yeah.
But so, real credit to the guys in that front four outside of Chris Jones. Some of these more unheralded guys like Treshaun Wharton and Mike Dana. Mike Dana, who, interestingly enough, had a really big game either last Super Bowl or the Super Bowl before. He's kind of a middling sort of pedestrian player in the regular season, and he's had 2 or 3 very hot postseasons. So I was impressed. He was kind of all over it as well this game, and I'm like, okay, this guy just this is what I think is kind of almost a little bit nebulous and cosmic to me with the Chiefs, which is that it seems like guys like that all over the field who are not really huge factors in the regular season, just somehow, some way. I think maybe Mahomes almost has that gravitational pull to an extent.
Yeah.
And just really, really come into their own and just make really big plays for the Chiefs in the playoffs. Hollywood Brown had a few really key catches. Xavier Worthy had a few amazing catches that were pretty contested and required
Did you know the Chiefs traded up with the Bills to get him? I only heard that 40,000 times. in the broadcast.
that and Josh Allen was looking a little bit like he's lacking a little bit of poise. Josh Allen looks nervous.
It's the new what's that? That white my brain is not working today. That wide receiver on the Pats who they played, Chris Hogan.
Oh, Chris Hogan.
Chris Hogan played lacrosse. Did you know?
It's like Chris Hogan played
Did you know that
Monmouth College, New Jersey's own Chris Hogan.
Right. Did you know that the Bills could have taken Xavier Worthy and they took Keon Cole? Like, okay, all right.
We get it. All right, that's enough.
Yeah.
He had a few great plays. I mean, it's also just hilarious that sometimes I was like, oh right, DeAndre Hopkins is like still on this team and like made a few nice catches as well. Like it was just
he can't separate anymore, but he can.
But
catch
that's
the
what
football.
I almost think is fascinating with this receiver group is like Mahomes is still able to make this work when like separation getting is definitely like a problem, but there's still just enough because he gets the ball out so quickly and he triggers on runs when like nothing is open, and he always has just like exactly enough in his foot speed to get away from a trailing defender.
Well, speaking of his foot speed, I mean, Mahomes was just rushing all over the place, which he also unleashes during the postseason, and he doesn't really run in the. They don't even care about the regular season. I think that's what we need to bake into
100%.
They are just better in the postseason because they save a lot of their stuff and they don't care. They know they're going to be there. It doesn't matter. They knew even last year when they were the 3 seed and they didn't have home field advantage throughout the playoffs. It didn't even matter then.
This is sort of why I feel like me and you have discussed it a lot of times where we see some of these analogs to the dynastic Warriors teams.
Yes.
Just in the sense of like being able to, even if they're faltering a little bit in the regular season or seeming a little bit more vulnerable, even if the record doesn't show it, just showing that like they're maybe not taking things as seriously, but can always turn it up when they need to get these victories, and then just being like basically unkillable in the playoffs until kind of everything runs its course. And the crazy thing with the Chiefs right now is that it doesn't even seem like Mahomes is close to running his course.
No,
yet,
I mean, come on. Like if Pacheco is healthier next year, I mean, they're
the whole line back potentially. If they even just upgrade at left tackle at the tackle spots, if they get a little bit better or healthier at the tackle spots, like with Tooney, Trey Smith, and Creed Humphrey still really, really solid in the middle. Like there are ways for this team to get better, which is shocking to even say.
It really is absolutely incredible. So we'll have plenty of time to preview the Super Bowl between these two teams, but it's gonna really be, I think, it's the difference between a dynasty and their clutchness and a physically talented group on the Philadelphia Eagles that is almost an all-star team. So which wins in the end? Is it the clutchness or is it the physicality? We shall see. Quick update, and we'll have a shorter episode today. I'm not necessarily sure if it's clear, but like I have a cold, and I was sick last week. There's just I don't understand. I'm like not feeling great. I'm getting sick a lot, so I'm not sure what it is. So apologies if I was a little fuzzy, but wanted to briefly at least touch on the coaching hires and specifically the hiring of Schottenheimer. But we have other scandals too.
I can't believe the Schottenheimer thing, by the way. There was a part of me, I was talking to one of my friends about this. Both me and him were like, surely this is like a smokescreen, right? Like
yeah.
But now I'm sort of like, we can kind of agree that Jerry Jones is not like serious about winning football games.
I think
right?
he's Bidening. I don't necessarily think there's anything going on up there.
That it might just honestly be like something is just going. Like he's
egomaniacal old man who can't let go of power and has an entire apparatus around him that enables his behavior, even though he's not cognizant and can't be running a team anymore.
And it'd be easier almost to have like one of his toadies take the reins as opposed to like actually.
And by toadies you mean his son?
Right, his son obviously in the front office, but then like the dynastic Schottenheimer, the Schottenheimer the younger, who is like inexplicably getting a head coach.
Maybe Stephen Jones is into this. He's like, oh, Brian Schottenheimer.
Yeah,
it's like the
Jerry and Marty,
me.
Yeah, Jerry and Marty, me and Brian. Look at this. This could be Jerry 2. Maybe it'll become Steven World one day.
So this is apparently because Dak Prescott wanted somebody from the coaching staff. I mean, they wanted McCarthy back because it seemed like it was going to work out, but that's not what's happening. So I think Mike McCarthy is likely going to be on the Saints, but we were saying this before the show.
It's just taking a while for them to like.
They're run like a bit of a family business,
like mom and pop, almost
even more
bit,
so.
yeah.
I feel like it is very McCaskey-esque with Chicago. Congrats to the Bears for finally getting it right, I think. But what is up with the Cowboys? Like, how are
they hired Eberflus for the DC spot, I think, or they're planning on it, if I'm not mistaken. I saw.
Oh, really?
What Matt Eberflus? I think I'll double check, but I'm pretty sure he got tapped for the Cowboys DC. Which, like, he's a good defensive play caller. I would not want him as my head coach, but
What is with them, though, with this, like, obsession with only hiring coaches who were former head coaches for their defensive coordinator? I mean, now we've had
Zimmer
Dan Quinn, Matt Eberflus. It's just like you can just see it, like they're he's interviewing at the very least with the Dallas Cowboys. So he was their linebackers coach for a little while. Or actually for quite a while, for 5 years, Eberflus.
Oh, so he has some like experience in Dallas. Okay, I was curious.
Maybe they should be hiring people that they don't know.
know.
I don't know, and maybe go through an actual process. But in the way that the same thing with Biden, it's just like the bringing back our old friends. We don't really care if we're steering this ship into the iceberg. I mean, tough crap. Basically, it's also just this arrogance too of like. It's the Cowboys. We're always going to have fans. We're always going to have dupes that can think that we're going to win the Super Bowl this year because we have Dak Prescott and CeeDee Lamb and Micah Parsons. But we're not really trying to. And it's like, no, I'm sorry. Now that the Commanders made the NFC Championship, you know the team with the longest NFC Championship drought? Do you know who that team is? It is the damn, and not NFC Championship winning, NFC Championship appearance. The Dallas Cowboys.
Which is so crazy to think, to think that we would be saying this about Washington a year ago. It's crazy.
The Cowboys are the worst team at achieving success, if you use that metric, since 1995, which was the last time that they went to the NFC Championship, and I think they won the Super Bowl that year. So Jerry, wake up. Like, you're not always going to have a bunch of fans at the ready. They were already despondent about this season. Now Schottenheimer is the coach. And, like, we made fun of the hire of Jonathan Gannon in Arizona. So it could work out. Schottenheimer could be a great coach. But the process is crazy and stupid and cynical. And it's either from the mind of an ailing old man that doesn't know what he's doing, or it just treats their fans like suckers and they don't actually have an interest in winning, just about hoarding as much money as possible. And it may just be both of those things.
That's, I think, what I think you're right. You're right in terms of you're absolutely right that anything can happen. It's just more a matter of, as you're saying, it just does not seem like this is sound thinking or rationale to compete in the today's day and age in the NFL.
No. To
kind of go through with someone who is kind of a continuation of your offensive scheme, which was not really blowing anyone's doors off to begin with, even when Dak Prescott was healthy.
Yeah.
It wasn't as if he was lighting it up before he got injured. He wasn't.
No.
They were not playing particularly well.
They were not playing particularly well. And I wonder what happens when a Mike McCarthy leaves, who I have a bunch of issues with him in terms of, like, can you win a Super Bowl with him if you don't have an Aaron Rodgers at quarterback? I'm not sure, because a lot of his offense is very simple. And then there's these fundamentally sound things in key moments or fundamental essentials in these key moments that he fails at, and he's failed at. But it's also the Cowboys. Is a chicken or the egg situation. And if you're the Saints, a guy like McCarthy is perfect to just right the ship. I mean, you're probably not going to win the Super Bowl with that kind of guy, but he can, at the very least, I've seen him described as a bit of like a general, where he can get the troops ready and, like, he can galvanize at least the team to play as a team, even if they're not, running a Kyle Shanahan kind of scheme or something like that.
It's more like I think for maybe a wayward franchise, it's like a floor raiser rather than like a ceiling raiser type hire.
Yes.
That at least, he's going to ensure some baseline level of play that's like above average.
But if they were getting rid of a Mike McCarthy for a Ben Johnson to elevate, everyone would be like, totally get it. But you're not paying McCarthy because you're cheap to elevate the offensive coordinator for an offense that has not shown to be like one of the better or more durable or flexible or creative offenses in the league. You're going with the son of the guy that everybody knows.
And also, if you'll recall, after Kellen Moore left Dallas, McCarthy assumed play calling duties.
That is true. That is true.
Like you're also elevating the guy who was just sort of kind of scheming out McCarthy's offensive game plan while not calling it in the actual game.
It is very odd, and the other part of this is the Jaguars head coaching search.
Yes, this is quite a morbid tale.
Isn't it just incredible how poorly some of these teams are run despite their value? Like they are multi-billion-dollar. I mean, the NFL, each team is worth billions of dollars at this point. Together, it's a multi-billion-dollar industry, and yet you have just the most like utter incompetence. Apparently, Shad Khan's son is running the analytics department down in Jacksonville, which would not shock me because every nerd who knows how to put together an Excel spreadsheet thinks that they can do analytics in the NFL and doesn't understand that it's still a people business and you can't boil down these men to individual numbers, but that's my small little rant about the analytics community. But there's a lot of guys like Shad Khan's son, like, oh, I know everything because of this PFF grade.
But do we know if this is Shad Khan's son, like who literally is who runs AEW, like the wrestling?
I have no idea.
Okay, I'm not sure. I'm wondering if it's also Tony Khan, who is literally the head of All Elite Wrestling, like the rival company to WWE.
Could be.
And I think, which is like. They are sort of, I think, have designs on like this little like sports fiefdom in Florida.
Yeah.
So it wouldn't surprise. I just don't know if Shad Khan has any other kids. That's why I was wondering.
Tony Khan is the senior vice president for football technology and analytics for the Jacksonville Jaguars.
He can do both. That seems kind of crazy.
Brady can own part of a team and then call the Super Bowl, so it doesn't really matter. They don't know anything. I mean, they don't care about any of this crap. It's complete conflicts of interest all over the place. Like you can be an owner that's invested in a gambling site and it doesn't matter, even though that could potentially affect the quality of the game. So the Jaguars, basically, if you could give me the timeline on this, Bradley, Liam Cohen got an offer from the Tampa Bay Bucks, an extension to be offensive coordinator, but there seemed to have been a deal in place for Cohen to take over the Jaguars. But they didn't want that to be public because, drum roll please, they had yet to satisfy their Rooney Rule requirements. And according to what you were telling me, Patrick Graham, but such a soft spot in my heart for Patrick Graham, former defensive coordinator for the Giants, who's a really smart football mind and consistently is always getting screwed over by getting invited to these interviews that they have no intention of hiring him for. But you were saying he might have been en route. So
this is from the reporting from Sports Illustrated's Albert Breer. So it looks like Cohen had interviewed and he'd gone down to 3 finalists to do a second interview with the team in person. Patrick Graham, former Raiders defensive coordinator, and former Jets coach Robert Saleh.
Both are, by the way, minority candidates. So the 2 interviews in person you need 2 in-person interviews with coaches of color to satisfy the Rooney Rule requirement. So
the complication for Cohen in terms of going back to the Bucks was his offer was contingent on from the Bucks was contingent on him not taking a second interview with the Jaguars. So Cohen asked for time to think it over and then came back and asked for more money. The Buccaneers responded by saying that their offer was the offer and that they needed an answer by Monday. He later asked to have until Tuesday. Then on Tuesday evening, he told the Bucs he'd have an answer Wednesday morning with the second interview with the Jags looming. So on Wednesday morning, Cohen verbally accepted the Bucs' 3-year deal to make him the highest-paid coordinator in NFL history. So after that, the Jaguars fire Trent Baalke, their general manager.
Yeah. Because Cohen threw his weight around and didn't want Baalke, who's not well liked amongst a lot of coaches in the NFL.
Across the board, like a pretty bad GM in his last stint with San Francisco and in Jacksonville.
But the Jaguars kept him on instead of clearing house, which would have made their coaching offer way more attractive to people who could bring in their own GM or vice versa.
And it seems as if also it's like that he was almost used as a bargaining chip. It's like, oh, if you want to fire Baalke, we'll fire Baalke just as long as you come and coach the team.
Yeah.
You know? So This is where things get even crazier. On Wednesday afternoon, with Cohn expected to be at one Buccaneer place to sign his deal, efforts by Team Brass to get a hold of Cohn failed. Around 5 p.m., Cohn called back to ask Jason Licht, the general manager, if it was okay if he came in Thursday morning to sign the contract, rather than doing it that night, and Licht told him that was fine. Around 10 a.m. Thursday, the Buccaneers still hadn't heard from Cohen, and assistant GM Mike Greenberg had to reach out to him on a contract for another offensive coach that was being finalized. That call went unanswered, too, as did additional attempts by Licht and Bowles. So they don't hear from him for a while, because apparently they said he was tending to a personal matter.
Yeah. The personal matter is getting that bag, baby.
And then he also told them that things had materially changed in Jaguar. He was going to travel there to explore the opening. This is what he told Todd Bowles. And then within an hour of that phone call, Buck staffer got tipped off by someone in the Jaguars facility that Cohn was already in the building. So this is where we get to the part where Patrick Graham comes back into play. There was a real emphasis from the Jags to keep this current visit under wraps, like to keep this a secret.
We are violating the Rooney Rule, and we do not want anyone to know.
The Jaguars had emphasized to Cohn's camp how important it was that the visit stay under wraps, which could explain why the coordinator kept his plans from the Buccaneers. In the wake of firing Balky, and in addition to a healthy financial offer, the Jags offered to Cohen a chance to effectively pick his general manager, an opportunity exceedingly rare for a first-time head coach. In fact, one colleague told Cohen that Kyle Shanahan's hire in San Francisco was the only such offer for a first-timer he could remember, like the one Cohen had in front of him. The secrecy over the visit did serve two theoretical purposes. One, obviously, it would preserve the Tampa offer for Cohen, which again was contingent on the OC not visiting Jacksonville. Two, it allowed the Jaguars to satisfy the Rooney Rule. Going into Thursday, the Jags only had one minority candidate in for an in-person interview. Salah's first was in person. They needed two to comply, so Graham was slated to come Thursday for the other. But the Jags didn't want word of their plans getting out, which could cause Graham to cancel. On Thursday morning, with Graham in, the Jaguars called Salah to cancel his scheduled second interview on Friday morning. So, all told, it seems as if Cohen literally shook down the Bucs to get this incredibly lucrative coordinator offer, then was like, but I do still kind of want to be head coach of the Jags, though. And was like, but they don't want me to go. So then it's like, I'm sick.
I mean,
sorry, I can't come and sign my new contract.
Yeah. I'm attending to a personal matter,
and I'm weirdly in Jacksonville for some reason.
I mean, the Bucs must have known that something was going on. Can you play this, Cohn?
Yes.
All right. So again, this is not how you want to start off your tenure with a new team. Cohn could be an amazing coach. Who knows? But who does he look like? Is it Ron Weasley?
It's kind of Ron Weasley.
It's Ron Weasley. This is not that exciting.
Duval.
Nope, keep playing it. Autoplay.
Duval.
Come on, bro.
Duval.
No.
Duval.
Oh, okay, all right. I think we got it. Hey.
It literally sounds like a
Why did he raise his eyebrow?
It literally sounds like a question. Like,
Duval. Duval.
Duval. And like, it's like rat. It's just like, and the smile after, it's like, bro, come on. Dude.
I really do feel like we're kind of a little, he looks like Ron Weasley. He looks like the guy from Spy Kids. We are in a back in the Jags era with Bortles.
100%. And also, this definitely is the look of a guy who's like, yeah, I did kind of scam both these teams.
Duval.
I already saw the contract. So even if I embarrass you from now on, sorry guys. You should have known this when you signed up for me that I was going to do this kind of thing.
Do put that check into my vault.
Give me $6 million.
Do you know
not take
how
the
to
position in
sign a
Tampa
check?
Bay. I'm going to do not take the position in Tampa. Sorry, Todd and Jason. My bad.
Well, look, Jonathan Gannon was somebody who did not have that swag, and neither does Liam Cohen, and Gannon's been okay. Perhaps our vibes are wrong, but I'm not feeling I'm not picking up what Liam Cohen is putting down there.
It's just like, it just is smarmy behavior, especially when it kind of runs into the obvious issues with the Rooney Rule, which is like, it really sucks that the Jags engagement with the Rooney Rule this time around was literally like, oh, but we want our white offensive wunderkind who's going to screw over our in-state rival. How do we get that black guy and that Lebanese guy to come back?
Yeah.
Even though we just sort of have to kind of run them through the motions, that knowing that we're not going to hire them.
It needs something different. I mean, and frankly, like these, I don't know. I don't know what to tell. I just feel badly specifically for these minority coaches who have to endure this kind of dog and pony show. And a lot of times, a guy like Patrick Graham, the compulsion is going to be, okay, but I want to be an NFL coach one day. If I don't take this interview, other teams may hear about it. I have to go through this whole facade. And also, perhaps it gets my name out there once again, which is what I need. But, I mean, we've just really regressed, like with the Jerron Mayo thing, too. And how they interviewed Pep Hamilton and Byron Leftwich, who were not going to get hired. And then they hired Mike Vrabel.
Right, and that's also, it seems a little bit of almost another example of the bastardization of it, which is like two guys who, for all intents and purposes, were not getting head coaching opportunities.
I'm putting this out there. I would not be shocked if the Jaguars lose like a first or second round pick over this. This was so brazen and a real embarrassment to the league.
Right.
But the thing that changes things, and I'm not even joking, is the politics of right now, this DEI stuff, where we're in a very right-wing reactionary moment.
Almost.
Yeah, we're in a white backlash moment in society. And like the NFL may just basically be like, yeah, we don't really like the Rooney Rule either. We kind of just did that to protect ourselves from litigation. And Brian Flores' lawsuit was enough of a slap on the wrist.
Yeah, okay, whatever. We'll deal with it.
By the way, Flores was in a lot of these conversations, not heard much about him at all, which he absolutely deserves it. I know they got smacked by the Rams, but that was not his fault. That was.
And what sucks with Graham
Darnold.
too is, by all accounts, it seems like he is genuinely a really good coach, and like and teams and.
I was saying Flores there, but yes, but Pat Graham too.
Yeah, I guess
right.
I'm saying just in the sense that Flores has at least gotten some interviews, or at least some more like. He had his head coaching opportunity with Miami. He has been a good coordinator or assistant, in Pittsburgh and Minnesota. Like the Jets, I think, interviewed him, which I also wouldn't have minded if they hired Flores, honestly, because I think he's just like not just because of what he does on defense, but because like similarly as to why I'm kind of happy about Aaron Glenn is like I want a level of intensity and discipline like distilled into this team, and I think Flores would do that. But I honestly do think that if Patrick Graham was kind of in the mold of one of these like McVay disciples and had the similar level of success that he had on the opposite side of the ball, he would get it. But honestly, I just literally think it's like, oh, not to be so cynical or crude when I say this, but it's like I just think honestly, either whether it's implicit or not, ownership groups or front offices are like, he's a black DC who maybe he could be good for an interim role. And if he works out, great. Or if not, we'll fire him.
Well, basically, I mean, and it's the same thing of like, why don't more black offensive coordinators rise up? I mean, there's very few. Eric Bieniemy's not even in the NFL anymore. Right. I was watching the Commanders playoff game, and you were like, oh, is that Anthony Lynn? Oh, wow, there he is over there. Like a black offensive mind who's now, I think, the running backs coach for the Commanders, if I'm remembering correctly.
And who got like one shot at a head coaching gig, and that was basically.
And then after that, it was Brandon Staley, and he was actually way worse.
And he stuck around for longer
with a way better roster.
Right.
So like there's like this idea that on the defensive side, you need intensity, and it's more brute strength. And like, it's Lawrence Taylor, we're a pack of wild dogs, like that quote that he had. And then on the offensive side, we need a really smart offensive mind. And those are the kinds of biases that we see all the time. And it's why, there's more black defensive coaches than there are white ones, than there are black coaches on the offensive side. So with that said, we talked about Vrabel. You mentioned that you like the Glenn hire for the Jets. Congrats then. I'm happy about that for you, although I don't think that the Jets had a ton of options, to be honest. Ben Johnson to the Bears. I mean, best coaching hire of the cycle. It seems like they paid him a lot of money, more than is typical of rookie head coaches, and he's deserving of that. He's clearly one of the best offensive minds that we've seen in quite a while. And yeah, Pete Carroll to the Raiders. I wasn't anticipating that, but
That's crazy.
they
That
similar to
came
Mike
out of nowhere for
McCarthy.
me.
Comes out of nowhere. Gosh, he is going to be the oldest NFL head coach.
Yeah, he's like 74.
He's got a lot of energy, but I do think that like maybe we'll see how it goes in Las Vegas. But I think he could at least stabilize that team and bring discipline in the same way Aaron Glenn could.
It's also kind of hysterical because I bet part of it was like, oh, Jim Harbaugh's gonna be so annoyed that we're in the same division now.
Oh yeah, that's true. That's
He's
true.
gonna be so pissed that we have to play each other twice a year now.
Back at it. All right, guys. Thanks so much. We will see you next Monday. No OT. Bye bye.
Bye.